G'day, it's your old mate Matthew here from the Yarnsman. Welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. In this episode, we have Nick Jeffrey for a yarn. Nick's a long-term friend of mine from Timaru. Went to high school together and even grew up on the same street. What was really interesting to me is about hearing his side of growing up in a small town, at an all-boys school, and the mentality around having a yarn with your mates or reaching out to a specialist for help, and then ultimately being able to have those yarns with his mates and the shared experience around that. I think it shows how we can all learn something from that, and any working age male probably can share that experience from high school years. Hope you enjoy the yarn. Hello and welcome to the Yarnsman podcast. Today we have Nick Jeffrey in with us. Nick's an old school mate. We grew up on the same street, Seddon Street in Timaru, the big smoke. And he's you were original Yarnsman, and you've been a long time supporter. So really appreciate that. How you going, mate?
Yeah, I'm going good, man. I'm just at the moment I'm enjoying my extended holiday break from my recent resignation before Christmas. So I'm enjoying summer. So I'm having a good time. There's obviously things attached to being unemployed, which we can delve into later. But I'm good. I'm really good, actually.
Yeah, man of leisure. Well, you're out on the bike. You biked here. Good bit of fitness.
I did. Unfortunately, it's a little bit windy for golf this afternoon, but you can't win them all.
What have you struggled with in the last week?
I think for me, being unemployed and actively looking for a new role, there's a level of anxiety that's attached to that. So I think the one thing that I've struggled with is there's things out of your control, and you can't try to force those things to happen. Things work out for a reason, and it always seems to be the case for me. So I think what I've struggled with in the last week is a little bit of anxiety attached to why haven't people called me. They said they were going to call me earlier this week and it hasn't happened. But then you remember it's not all about you. They have their own life. They have their own problems. They have their own things that they need to be responsible for. So when you kind of detach that anxiety, it becomes less and less.
Oh, I mean, it is the job hunt is an emotional roller coaster, right?
Yeah, especially when you want certain things. And I'm at the period of my life and my career where, I've been through a number of roles, the good and the bad and the ugly, and I certainly want what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And there's limitations around that in Christchurch particularly, but it always works out for me and always has, so I'm sure it will always will.
Good. What do you want to work on in the next week?
I think for me, I think that I'm really focused on this year is trying to have an element of control, and control can be used loosely in terms of a phrase. For me, I like being goal orientated. I like having control around what I do on a daily and a weekly basis, particularly because I'm not going to work. So I want to make sure that I'm not just sitting at home twiddling my thumbs. I'm out doing physical activity. I'm exercising. I'm being helpful. I'm making sure that when my partner comes home from work, she has dinner cooked. So I'm a contributing member of the household. So I'm certainly trying to work on having things that I can achieve, and having small goals that lead to bigger goals. I want to make sure I'm going to the gym every day because I want to lose some weight after the Christmas period. So small things that lead to bigger things down the line.
All good positive stuff. What are you proud of?
I'm proud of a lot of things at the moment. I'm proud of my relationship with my partner. That's going really great. It's a relatively new relationship, probably 6 or so months. Things are progressing really well. Proud of my relationship with my family. I haven't been closer to my family than I am now. My sister's getting married in a couple of weeks. My nephew's their birthday next weekend, so I'm trying to be really family orientated. So I'm really proud of my relationship with them, and proud that my niece and nephews really look forward to seeing me, and it makes me feel really good about myself. So
That is cool.
I'm proud of that. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's special. What gives you hope?
I think I'm really optimistic about the future. A lot of things give me hope. I feel grounded. I feel in control of many elements of my life. Feeling really positive. A lot of things give me hope. Obviously, removing the anxiety about my employment, particularly with my mortgage to pay. But yeah, I'm really optimistic about the future. I'm hopeful that things will work out. I'm certainly glass half full mentality at this point.
Right, well, diving into it then, big guy, you've been on quite a journey. What's the yarn you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll delve into my personal situation, and the thing that I really resonated with the whole Yarnsman mentality and philosophy was, things happen to people in their lives. Myself, I went through a breakup. I had a long-term partner of 5 years. We were engaged. We were due to be married within the next 6 months, and we abruptly broke up. And, that was a really large period of turmoil for me. I guess the thing that I want to kind of talk about today and reflect on that experience, that was a couple of years ago now. So, I can look back at it and I can be reflective of that, and I can talk about my personal experience. But I think for me, I was in that position, and there is really tangible steps that you can take. So I kind of wanted just to touch on that, share some of my personal experience, because at the time it was the worst period of my life, and you've got through that, and now I'm certainly a better person for it. So I think for me, I broke up with my partner really abruptly. We had an argument, and it ended. I left the property at the house that we lived in together. I left, and then a week later I moved out, and I never went back. And we never, patched things up. We never got back together, and our relationship ended. The engagement was cancelled, the wedding was cancelled, and that was that. So obviously with that, this life stage I was at the time, I would have been 36. We were talking about having children. All my friends had children. That's what I wanted. All of a sudden I lost my partner. I lost my dog. I lost the house I was living in. I lost my future in many sense. I lost the idea of having children in the near future. I lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really fortunate for me because I had a support network, but also I was educated. Previously I lived in Melbourne. I lived in Melbourne for 13 years. I went through a period of, how would I describe it? I felt really restless. My thoughtfulness was really restless, and I was lucky enough that I had a friend of mine who was going through a similar thing. We were having a conversation or a yarn over a beer, as you do, and he said he was seeing a psychologist, and I thought, is he alright? Like, that's outrageous. I never heard of anyone that had spoken to a psychologist, and it was something that was completely foreign to me. And I started to talk to him about how I was feeling about certain things, and I wouldn't say I was anxious. I wouldn't say I was depressed. I wouldn't say I was struggling in many aspects of my life, but I really felt unfulfilled. So I was lucky enough I went and saw a psychologist. Really nervous at the start, really foreign environment. I felt awkward, I felt scared, I just felt weird. And then he put me instantly at ease. He was an older guy, he would have been in his 70s. Instantly I felt relaxed, and I just talked. And what we found was I wasn't enjoying the moment. I wasn't living in the moment. And I had a really restless mind. And that led me to being really unfulfilled. It led me being unfulfilled in my relationships. It led me being unfulfilled in my professional life. And it even led me feeling unfulfilled when I was trying to relax. And an example that he gave me, which really got me thinking about things, was he asked me what I like to do to relax. And where I lived in Melbourne, I lived by the Yarra River. So you could walk along the river, and there was nature, and it was nice, it was tranquil. So I'd go for walks after work, obviously Melbourne weather, 30 degrees sunshine. And I'd go there to relax, but then I'd come back and I wouldn't be relaxed at all. And what would actually happen was I'd go for walks, I'd listen to music, and I'd play on my phone the whole time. So I was never actually connecting and really relaxing. And so he kind of coached me to think about, enjoying the moment and appreciating where I was. There'd be times where I'd be walking, and then I'd be looking at my phone, I'd look up and I wouldn't even realise where I was, and I'd been walking for a K or two. So I started going for walks without my phone, and at the time I created all these excuses, like, well, I need to listen to music, what if someone wants to call me? They were excuses in every sense. And he just said, just try and just appreciate that moment. And so I'd go for walks, I'd take no phone, and then I'd start to appreciate things. I'd notice that it was ducks in the river, and you know, you'd hear the sounds, and then you start to think about things, and you'd actually be more and more relaxed. And so I started to apply that sort of ethos to different aspects of my life. So at work, I really started to think about, all the things that I had, and always wanted something more and something better, and not just financially. I wanted more career fulfillment. I want more excitement. I wanted bigger clients and more exciting campaign work. But I was never actually appreciating all the things that I had. So I was fortunate during my breakup that I could lean back on that coaching and that appreciation of the moment. And then, so I broke up with my partner, really in a bad place. I went and stayed with friends. I went and stayed back down in Geraldine with my parents. I was still trying to go to work. I was feeling really lost. And so I thought, last time I saw a psychologist was the best thing I ever did. So I'm going to do that again. So I went on Google and I Googled psychologist Christchurch. And there was a website which was basically like find a psychologist that matches your profile. I can't remember the website.
I'll put the website in the link in the description.
And yes, I came across a guy called Dr. Lex McDonald. He's a psychologist. He's semi-retired. Apologies if you're not semi-retired.
Yeah.
Based out in sort of near Sumner. And, at the time I was an anxious mess. I just felt like, I had no control. And I like to be a person who has control of certain elements of my life.
As much as you can. Yeah.
And I certainly had no control. I had no place to live. I was an emotional wreck at work because my employer, my boss, knew my ex-partner, and she was also a client of the agency that I worked at. Everything was gone. So I went and saw Dr. Lex, and the first thing he did was he just let me talk, and he took notes, and he just let me talk. It was a very emotional first session. I cried.
Yeah, rightly so.
And the analogy he used was, it was like I was in the shore break and I was getting tossed up by the white water, and I had no element of control, and I was reaching for stability, but I couldn't find it because there was no stability because I was in the white water, which I think is a really great analogy. And an exercise we did was, he made me write a list of all the things that I had lost, or I thought I had lost. And then he also made me write a list of all the things that I hadn't lost. And, so I'd lost the place I was living, which was our home together. I'd lost my partner and all that emotional attachment. I lost my dog, all of these things that I felt like I'd lost. I'd lost my opportunity to be a father, which was something that I was really looking forward to, that we'd had conversations about, getting married. I'd lost all of these things. But then on the flip side, I had my niece and nephew, or my nephews and my niece. I had a great relationship with my parents. I moved back to New Zealand to be closer to family. I had a great network of friends. All of a sudden, the list of things that I had outweighed the list of the things that I'd lost. And then what Dr. Lex we talked about at length was, I might have lost those things, but I haven't lost those things forever. It's all about a moment in time. I'd lost the opportunity to be potentially a father at that moment in time, but that doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. And all of a sudden, I started to regain control, because it wasn't gone forever; it was gone temporarily, or it was gone for that moment in time. Same with a place to live, same with a partner. All of those things. It was a temporary moment in time, and that started to give me element of control back, which started to help me to take those steps to gain control back again. And soon after I got an apartment that I moved into, I changed employer, so I had a different role, so I removed all of that anxiety from my workplace. So I took those steps, and it sounds really functional, and it was, but it wasn't. It was an emotional roller coaster, because you don't know what you're going to get. But by simply listing out all of those things that I was grateful for, and all those things that I had in my life, made me understand, I've actually lost some things, but I'm a very, very fortunate person.
This is a really interesting thing. that kind of relationship breakup, challenge or crisis of identity and purpose because of the things that, it was, as you say, a moment in time. So much of the work we do is really targeted at that relationship breakdown. We know most, if not all, suicide attempts have had a relationship breakdown in the 12 to 48 hours prior. So this whole process is a really interesting one, right, and really important, and it's great that you've been able to reach out and get that. I wanted to take a bit of a step back, and the talking about the, I would say, our upbringing of a taboo nature of talking to a counsellor or psychologist and going through that. Thinking back to Timaru Boys High School, I don't know if you remember Mr. Bunting and the guidance counsellor there. Did that experience of, in our time, you were sort of ridiculed if you were seen talking to him or anything, right? Mm-hmm. Did that really weigh on your mind, the whole, when you think about your early experience?
For me, it was just a foreign concept completely. Like, I was always a lad's lad, if you want to call it that. Like, I've been lucky to have really robust, strong friendships, and, I'm still friends. My best friends today are my best friends from high school. So I've been really fortunate at that. And, we never used to talk about our feelings. We never used to talk about, how we were feeling in terms of anxiety and stress. And, I grew up in the 90s. Like, I was born in 86. So, like, even the coin of, like, just suck it up and toughen up and, all of that was the thing. Like, we never even were educated about mental health and what that even meant. And it was always just a suck it up mentality. And certainly you wouldn't talk to your friends about that because you'd be seen to be, for a better use of the term, a pussy.
Yeah. When you think about the yarn you had with your mate over a beer, I mean, it's easy to do it. It's easy to do it over a beer or whatever. But do you have those conversations more now?
Yeah, I think certainly now, because it's a less of a taboo subject, and also I've had friends who have committed suicide. But my best friend's younger brother, and he's been through mental health situations himself, and he continues to do so. So, he was one of the first people that I told that I was seeing a psychologist, and his response was, "That's great. Like, let me know if you want to talk about things, and I'll tell you about my experience." And then it became a shared experience. So certainly now it's a lot more, how would I describe it, less taboo. It's a lot easier. And particularly, like, you know how to ask the right questions. And there's always the thing about listening, or I think the natural tendency for all males is try to solve a problem.
100%.
It's really easy to ask two simple questions, and I practice this with my partner now. She might have had a bad day at work and she'll come home. And I'll ask her, do you want me to listen or do you want me to help?
Yeah. We have that one too.
Like, she might just want to vent. And, the tendency is to offer a solution and say, here's what I do. She doesn't need your advice or want your advice. She just wants you to listen. And so I try to have that same ethos when I talk to my friends as well. And, just let them talk. There's no pressure. It can be a candid environment. It can even just be spending time with someone in a safe environment, being your friendship.
Well, that shared experience that you touched on, that's a really important one. Of like, how do we get to more shared experiences where we can have those open yarns?
Yeah, I certainly think, depending on your relationship with that person, there's a scale. So some people in my friendship group, it would be a much easier conversation. Others, it would be a more difficult conversation, but just because of the depth of the relationship. And different friendships in different ways. Like, there'd be people I would call if I wanted to, had a hard conversation with them, and there'd be people I call if I wanted a lighter conversation. So I think it all depends, but I think simply just by them knowing that you are available can go a long way as well.
With your, I'm going to put you on the spot here, just because this is interesting. With your marketing strategy brain and experience, what kind of tagline or advice would you give to people around, being open to a yarn, but also, as you just said, that not everyone is the right person for you to go and have that yarn with.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because you think about from a marketing perspective, consumer psychology, needs and wants, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and all of those type of things. Different messages are going to resonate with different people, and also it's around trying to find people who kind of look like you from a external perspective, which will ultimately drive that resonation. It's a tricky one to create a tagline of sorts, but I think the more that you can understand about a person in terms of information gathering is only going to help foster the depth of conversation as well. So I think for me, the first thing I always try to do when I am doing a piece of strategy work is research and discovery, which ultimately, if you want to apply it to a conversation lens, it's just asking questions and letting people talk and asking those open-ended questions. And phrasing certain words in certain ways as well, I think, can go a long way.
And not being afraid to ask the question and then not and anything else, right?
Yeah, and certainly asking the question and not being prepared to get the response that you don't want to hear is a bit of a juxtaposition as well. So you need to be prepared that if you are going to open that can of worms, if you want to term it that way, you need to be prepared that you're going to get something back that you might not necessarily be prepared for. So you need to be able to be comfortable having that conversation because it could go very deep very quickly.
Yeah, and then there's probably a bit to chime in here with is that, if it does get really difficult and you don't know the answer to the question, it's okay to say, I don't know the answer to that, or that makes me feel uncomfortable. How about we call 1737 or, go and book in with the GP and continue the conversation, right?
I think for me, now I have the experience and the tools to be able to cater for that conversation. And if I have a conversation with a friend of mine is going through a breakup with his wife, who had an affair,
Full on.
So obviously that's a big tumultuous situation for him. They have children, they own a house together, and so for me it was an easy conversation to have with him because I simply went back to my situation and I said, here's what I did and it helped me, and he can see me being in a much better place than I was during that time, which was 2 years ago. So, it's easy for me to give advice because I've been down that path myself. For other people, it's much more difficult if you haven't been down that journey yourself. And for me, seeing a psychologist was the best thing that has ever happened to me because it's made me much more emotionally aware. It's made me a lot more reflective. It's made me think about things in a much different perspective. And I will continue to go see a psychologist for the rest of my life, even just for a check-in. I haven't seen Dr. Lex for probably, I'd say 18 months now, but I think about him a lot, and I think about going to see him just for a conversation because I want to show him, how far I've progressed, but then also in the back of my mind, I don't want to necessarily waste his time if that's the right way to think about it.
But this is a hugely positive thing. You've come, well, it's sort of, most people have a relationship breakdown and you've used it as a really positive thing. And now, you can use it to have better relationships going forward with your friends, with your partner, with your family.
Yeah, and certainly one thing that my ex said to me, which, really still sticks to this day, she was like, you will be the better partner for your next partner. And she's completely right because I now am much more emotionally intelligent.
Thanks very much.
Situations in different ways. You think about the impact of your actions on someone else. And, the psychologist gave me those tools to think like that. And it takes practice. It takes work. And you need to be through that experience to be able to be in tune with that stuff. But it's a really simple process. And, a really functional thing that people can do. And I still do it to these days. I have a list of things that I'm grateful for, and it's a great sense check. If you're having a bad day, I look at my phone and I have a picture of my niece or my nephews, and you go, it's great. I now have that relationship with these kids, and I'm a big part of their lives. I'm really grateful for that. the fact that I have anxiety about employment is insignificant because they don't care that I don't have a job.
Mate, this has been a really good yarn. Stepping out, sharing your yarn, and helping other people feel comfortable to reach out and get that help, and equally to support their family and friends. So, thank you very much, and thank you for your continued support of the Yarnsman.
You're very welcome.
Good man.